My family degraded me as worthless and favored my golden child sister, but my revenge is about to begin. I, 25 meters, need to share this story because it finally came to an end, and revenge was served perfectly cold. My sister, 20F, was always our family's golden child, while I was treated like I was worthless. This isn't just your typical family favoritism, it was systematic and cruel, and it shaped my entire childhood in ways that still affect me today. Growing up in a supposedly upper-middle-class suburban home in California, my life looked perfect from the outside. We had a nice house, Dad worked in finance, Mom was a loving presence, and we seemed like the ideal American family. But behind closed doors, it was a different story entirely. From my earliest memories, my father was barely present in my life. He'd be there physically on weekends, sometimes, but mentally? He was never there for me. His excuse was always work, endless meetings, important clients, late-night calls. But when my sister came along 5 years later, suddenly Dad and Mom had all the time in the world. It was like someone flipped a switch, transforming him from an absent parents into the world's most devoted parents, just not to me. I discovered computers when I was 8. I was very close to my aunt. She had brought home an old PC from her office, thinking I might enjoy learning about it. She was right. It was love at first sight. While other kids were playing sports or video games, I was fascinated by how computers worked. I started learning basic programming from library books, spending hours trying to understand code and create simple programs. My aunt understood my passion. Every time she came over, she sat down with me and actually listened to me. She wasn't tech savvy herself, but she saw how my eyes lit up when I talked about my latest projects. She'd sit with me for hours, asking questions, encouraging me to explain things in simple terms. "You're teaching me too," she'd say with a smile. Those moments with her, sharing my enthusiasm for technology, are some of my most precious memories. Mom and Dad, however, saw my interest in computers as a personal failure, their failure to raise a normal son. "Real men play sports," they'd say, their voice dripping with disappointment. "Stop wasting time with those computer games." They weren't games. I was teaching myself Python and JavaScript, but they never bothered to understand the difference. Any attempt to explain what I was actually doing was met with eye rolls or dismissive waves. The contrast in how they treated my sister was stark and painful. When my sister showed interest in football at age 6, Dad immediately became super dad. He bought the best equipment, coached her team, my parents attended every practice. Our backyard became a training ground, with Dad spending hours teaching my sister proper throwing techniques. My mom cooking her favorite meals. The sound of their laughter and bonding would drift up to my room where I sat alone with my computer. My aunt tried her best to balance things out. She knew what was happening and did everything she could to make up for their favoritism. She'd come to my computer club meetings, help me set up for science fairs, and always made sure to celebrate my achievements, even if family ignored them. "You're special in your own way," she'd tell me. "Don't let anyone make you feel less than you are." I remember one particular evening when I was 12. I had just finished my first real program, a simple game I had coded myself. I was so excited to show it to someone. I tried to call my aunt, but for some reason she couldn't get back to me, and my mom wasn't at home, so I went to find Dad. He was in the backyard with my sister, as usual, practicing football plays. I waited patiently for nearly an hour before trying to get his attention. "Dad, can I show you something? I made a game." He didn't even look at me. "Not now, can't you see we're busy? This is important. Your sister has a game this weekend." That moment crystallized everything. My achievements would never be important enough for him. I went back to my room and cried that night, but it was also when I made a decision. I would succeed, not for him, but for myself and Mom. Then came the darkest day of my life. I was 13 when my aunt passed away suddenly from an aneurysm. One day she was there, making breakfast and asking about my latest coding project, the next, gone. The loss was devastating, but what came after was even worse. Without her balancing presence, my family's favoritism became blatant and unchecked. The days following Aunt's death showed me exactly where I stood in the family. My family threw themselves completely into my sister's life, using sports as an escape from grief. They attended every football game, every practice, every school event. Meanwhile, I processed my grief alone in my room, finding solace in coding more complex programs, trying to create something that would make Aunt proud. I still remember my first major achievement after Aunt's death. I was 14, and I had won first place in the state computer science fair. I had created a program that could help organize the school's library system, something the teachers said could actually be implemented. The fair was on a Saturday, and I had left a note for my family about it on the fridge 3 weeks in advance. I waited all day at that fair, watching other kids' parents come and go, taking pictures and offering congratulations. Every time the door opened, I looked up hopefully. They never came. Later that evening, I found out they had been at my sister's football practice, not even a game, just routine practice. When I got home with my blue ribbon, they barely glanced at it. "That's nice," they said, before turning back to helping my sister with her homework. The pattern continued through high school. My sister was the star quarterback, my family's pride and joy. Every dinner conversation revolved around her latest game or her prospects for college sports scholarships. I would sit there, pushing food around my plate, listening to them talk about how my sister was going to be a successful businessman someday, following in her footsteps. Any attempt I made to talk about my achievements in programming competitions or the websites I was building for local businesses was met with dismissive grunts or outright interruption. "That's enough about computers," Mom would say, before turning the conversation back to my sister's latest touchdown. I learned to keep my head down, focusing on my work and planning for the future. I knew that if I wanted to succeed, it would have to be on my own terms. I started taking on freelance programming jobs at 16, building websites for small businesses in our area. I saved every dollar, knowing I would need it for college. My room became my sanctuary, filled with computer parts and coding books. Dad would walk by, shake his head, and mutter about how I was wasting my potential. The freelance work taught me more than just programming. I learned about business, client relations, and project management. By my junior year of high school, I had a solid portfolio and a growing reputation in our local business community. Some clients even started referring me to others, and I was making decent money for a teenager. One of my regular clients, a local bookstore owner, reminded me a lot of Aunt. She would always ask about my latest projects, genuinely interested in understanding what I was doing. She even offered to write me a letter of recommendation for college, saying she had never seen someone so young with such a strong work ethic. The real breaking point came during my senior year of high school. I had been accepted into several top computer science programs, including one at a prestigious tech school in Silicon Valley. My grades were excellent, and I had even secured a partial scholarship. But I still needed help with tuition. I prepared a detailed presentation for my family, showing them my acceptance letters, scholarship offers, and a business plan for how I would contribute to my education through continued freelance work. I even included statistics about career prospects in tech and potential return on investment. I spent weeks preparing, hoping that a logical, business-minded approach would finally get through to them. The meeting lasted less than 5 minutes. "I'm not wasting money on your computer hobby," they said, not even looking at my carefully prepared documents. "Your sister has real potential. She needs that money for her future business degree." The fact that my sister was struggling academically didn't matter to her. In my family's eyes, my sister could do no wrong, while I could do no right. I couldn't hold back anymore. "My aunt would have supported me," I said, my voice shaking. "She believed in me." Their face hardened. "Well, she's not here, is she? And while you're under our roof, we do things our way. Your sister is going to have a real career, not waste time playing with computers." That night, I called my grandmother, Mom's mom. She had always kept in touch after Aunt died, sending me birthday cards and checking in occasionally. When I told her what happened, she was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "Your aunt would be so proud of you. Let me see what I can do." My grandmother wasn't wealthy, she worked as a high school teacher, but she became my saving grace. She offered to help with what she could from her savings. She reached out to other family members and friends, telling them about my situation and my potential. Several of Aunt's old friends contributed what they could. Through their combined help and my saved freelance earnings, I managed to piece together enough for my first year of college. It meant taking out loans and working part-time, but I was determined to make it work. The day I left for college, my family barely looked up from their newspaper. My sister was too busy with football practice to say goodbye. Only my grandmother came to see me off, hugging me tightly and slipping me an envelope with a bit more money she had managed to save. College was a revelation. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who understood and appreciated my passion for technology. My programming skills, which had been dismissed at home, were recognized and valued. Professors praised my work ethic and creativity. I threw myself into my studies, maintaining my scholarships while also continuing to do freelance work. During my junior year, I started developing what would later become my ticket to success. It wasn't just another app. It was a solution to a common problem I had noticed during my internships at several tech companies. The idea came to me during a late-night coding session, and I immediately knew it had potential. I worked on it between classes, during nights, on weekends, any spare moment I had. My roommate thought I was crazy, barely sleeping, constantly coding. But I could feel that this was different. This wasn't just another project, this was my future. Through all of this, my family's voice would sometimes echo in my head, "Your computer hobby will never amount to anything." Those words, which had once hurt so much, now fueled my determination. Every line of code I wrote was a step further from their shadow, closer to proving them wrong. I kept in touch with my grandmother throughout college. She was my biggest cheerleader, always believing in me just like Aunt had. When I told her about my app idea, she didn't understand the technical details, but she understood my passion. "You sound just like your aunt when she got excited about something," she said, making me smile through tears. I graduated with honors, but neither my family nor my sister attended the ceremony. My grandmother was there, though, beaming with pride. She had seen my potential from the start, just like Aunt had. The contrast between her genuine support and my family's dismissal couldn't have been clearer. After graduation, I took a risk that would have given my family a heart attack if they'd bothered to know about it. I turned down several lucrative job offers to focus on developing my app. I lived in a tiny studio apartment, eating ramen and working 18-hour days. My grandmother continued to believe in me, occasionally sending care packages and words of encouragement. Meanwhile, family gossip, via my grandmother, kept me informed about my sister's struggles in her business program. My family had to hire tutors and make substantial donations to keep her from failing out. Still, in their eyes, my sister was the one with real potential, while my tech career was just a phase that would eventually fail. Little did they know that my phase was about to change everything. But that's where the next update begins, with the launch of my app and the start of my company's meteoric rise. What happened next would prove to be the perfect setup for the most satisfying revenge against their years of dismissal and disrespect. I'm still amazed at how everything turned out, but I'll save those details for the updates. Let's just say that karma has a way of coming back around, and sometimes the best revenge is massive success, especially when you can use that success to teach some very specific lessons to those who doubted you. The next update will explain how my worthless computer hobby turned into a multi-million-dollar company, and how my family's golden child's real potential led to a very different outcome. Stay tuned. The satisfaction of what happened next still brings a smile to my face. Update 1. It's been a wild ride since my last post. A lot of you asked for details about how my app actually took off, so here's the full story of how my worthless hobby transformed into a multi-million-dollar company. After graduation, I moved into the cheapest apartment I could find in Silicon Valley, basically a closet with a bathroom. The rent still ate up most of my savings, but the location was crucial. I needed to be where the action was, where potential investors and partners were just a coffee meeting away. The first 3 months were brutal. I was living on instant noodles and energy drinks, coding for 18 to 20 hours a day. My app, which I'd started in college, was a solution for streamlining corporate communication systems, something I noticed was a huge pain point during my internships. But turning a working prototype into a market-ready product was a whole different challenge. My breakthrough came from an unexpected source. I was working part-time as a barista to make rent, and one morning, a guy in a suit noticed me coding during my break. He asked what I was working on, and instead of giving my usual vague response, I decided to give him my elevator pitch. Turns out, he was a project manager at a major tech company, dealing with exactly the kind of communication issues my app was designed to solve. He offered to beta test my app with his team. For 6 weeks, I got real-world feedback from actual users. The app wasn't perfect. There were bugs, UI issues, and features that needed tweaking, but the core functionality was solid. More importantly, the team loved it. They started using it for all their projects, even after the beta test ended. Word spread through the company. Soon, other teams wanted to use it too. The project manager introduced me to their head of innovation, who was interested in potentially investing. But they wanted to see more features, more polish, more proof that this could scale. I didn't sleep for 2 weeks straight, implementing every piece of feedback and adding new features. My grandmother sent me care packages with coffee and snacks, worried about my health but supportive as always. Your aunt would tell you to take better care of yourself, she'd say, but I could hear the pride in her voice. The meeting with the investors was surreal. I walked into a room full of executives, wearing a suit I borrowed from a friend. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady as I demonstrated the app. When I finished, there was silence. Then the head of innovation said something I'll never forget: "This isn't just a solution, it's the future of corporate communication." They offered to invest $2 million for a 15% stake in my company. The valuation was beyond anything I'd dreamed of. But they wanted something else too. They wanted to be my first major client, implementing the app across their entire organization. Things moved fast after that. I hired my first employees, brilliant developers I'd known from college who believed in my vision from the start. We moved into a real office, though I kept living in my tiny apartment. Every dollar of investment went into the company. The app's success with our first major client led to more interest. Other companies started reaching out. Within 6 months, we had signed contracts with 3 Fortune 500 companies. Our team grew from 4 to 20 people. Revenue wasn't just steady, it was exploding. 1 year after that first investment, we did another funding round. This time, we raised $15 million at a $100 million valuation. The hobby that my family had dismissed was now a significant player in enterprise software. My grandmother cried when I told her the numbers. Then she told me something I didn't know. She'd gone to my family 6 months earlier, trying to convince them to reconcile. Their response? He just got lucky. It won't last. But it did last. In fact, it kept growing. We kept innovating, expanding our product line, solving bigger problems. Major tech publications started writing about us. I was invited to speak at conferences. People in the industry knew my name. The best part? Through all of this success, I never once reached out to my family or my sister. They could see my success in the news, on tech websites, in industry magazines. But I maintained my distance, focusing on building something meaningful rather than proving them wrong. That strategy turned out to be perfect. Because what happened next, what I'll share in the next update, shows exactly how karma works. Let's just say that the golden child's real potential and my family's certainty about her business acumen were about to be tested in a way they never expected. Stay tuned for update 2. You'll want to hear how my sister's guaranteed success in business turned out, and what happened when they finally had to face the reality of their past treatment of me. Update 2. Things have taken a dramatic turn since my last update. Remember how my family always said my sister had real business potential? Well, that story just imploded spectacularly, and I've got a front row seat to the chaos. Through industry connections, I learned that my sister had started a chain of high-end sports bars with families backing. The concept was simple: luxury venues where business executives could watch games in style. My family had liquidated a significant portion of their retirement fund to finance this sure thing, convinced that my sister's natural business sense would make it a success. The first red flag should have been my sister's complete lack of experience in restaurant management. She'd never even worked a service job my family had always said that was beneath her. Instead, they hired her old football buddies as managers, none of whom had any relevant experience either. Their business plan was essentially a joke, all flash, no substance. They spent ridiculous amounts on premium locations and flashy decorations, but completely overlooked basics like inventory management and staff training. The prices were astronomical, justified by my sister's belief that rich people will pay anything. One of my developers, who used to work in restaurant tech, looked at their operation and said it was a disaster waiting to happen. Their POS system was outdated, their inventory management was practically non-existent, and their staff turnover was through the roof due to mismanagement. The first location hemorrhaged money from day one. Instead of addressing the fundamental issues, my sister convinced my family to open a second location, insisting they just needed to scale up to be profitable. My family, still believing in their golden child's infallible business sense, took out loans to make it happen. Then came the health code violations. Turns out, when you put inexperienced friends in charge of food service, things go wrong. Both locations were cited multiple times. The local restaurant review blog did a scathing write-up that went viral in the business community, exactly the demographic they were targeting. The real kicker? My sister had been fudging the numbers, hiding the true extent of their losses from my family. When it all came to light, they were losing over $50,000 per month per location. Their high-end clientele had evaporated, driven away by poor service and bad reviews. Meanwhile, my company was thriving. We just closed a deal with a major restaurant chain to implement our management software across their locations, software that could have prevented many of my sister's business mistakes. The irony wasn't lost on me. My family had dumped nearly their entire retirement fund into my sister's failing venture. Then came the loans they'd taken out. When the second location failed even faster than the first, they were left with massive debt and no way to pay it back. I heard through my grandmother that my family had to put their house on the market. My sister moved back home, her reputation in the local business community completely destroyed. All those years of being the golden child with natural business talent couldn't save her from the reality of her incompetence. But here's where it gets interesting. Some of their debt got sold to a collection agency. And guess who had the opportunity to buy that debt package? That's right, my company. I hadn't planned it this way, but sometimes the universe has a sense of humor. I haven't made any moves yet. I'm saving that for what comes next. Because based on what my grandmother just told me, they're about to swallow their pride and do something they've never done before. Ask me for help. The next update will be the finale to this story, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Let's just say that all those years of being the worthless son have set up the perfect ending. Sometimes revenge isn't something you have to actively pursue, sometimes it's just sitting back and letting people face the consequences of their own actions. Stay tuned for Update 3, where everything comes full circle in the most satisfying way possible. Update 3. This is the final update, and it's better than I could have ever scripted. Yesterday, my family and sister finally showed up at my office. No warning, no appointment. They just appeared, looking completely out of place in our modern tech space. They didn't recognize me at first. I've changed since they last saw me. Success has a way of changing how you carry yourself. I was in the middle of a virtual meeting when my assistant messaged me, 3 people insisting on seeing you. They claimed to be family. I made them wait in the lobby for 45 minutes while I finished my meeting. Through the glass walls, I could see them growing increasingly uncomfortable, surrounded by screens displaying our company's latest achievements and press coverage. My sister kept fidgeting. Mom and Dad looked like they'd aged a decade. When I finally had my assistant show them in, the look on their faces was priceless. Dad's eyes darted around my corner office, my mom was in utter shock, taking in the view of Silicon Valley, the awards on the walls, the evidence of the success they'd never believed possible. My sister could barely meet my eyes. Son, Dad started, his voice lacking its usual authority, You've done well for yourself. Mom started, I always believed in you or my son, and I know you could have done it, and here we are now. The forced acknowledgement almost made me laugh. Classic family, even now, they couldn't give a straight compliment. I let them squirm in silence for a moment before asking, what brings you here? They tried to dance around it at first. Dad attempted some small talk about my computer business, still couldn't bring himself to call it a tech company. My sister stared at her shoes. Finally, desperation won out over pride. The truth came spilling out. The sports bars had left them with over $3 million in debt. My family's house was in foreclosure. My sister's reputation was so destroyed that he couldn't even get entry-level interviews. All her former football connections had abandoned her after the business failure. They needed my help. Specifically, they needed money. We're family, Dad said, as if that meant anything after all these years. Family helps family. That's when I pulled out the folder. You mean like this kind of help? I slid it across the desk. Inside was documentation showing that my company now owned their debt. Every single cent they owed now belonged to me. Their faces went pale. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice steady. You're going to sign up for a payment plan. Every month, you'll pay back what you owe. No family discounts. No easy way out. Think of it as a business lesson since you're all such natural business family. My sister started to protest, but I cut her off. And here's the best part. I've arranged for the payments to be automatically deducted from any accounts you open. No escaping this one. I've also taken the liberty of placing liens on any future assets you might acquire. Mom started sobbing while Dad tried to pull his authority card one last time. Son, be reasonable. I am being reasonable, I replied. I'm treating this like business, just like you taught me. Or rather, just like you taught her. I nodded toward my sister. Isn't that what you wanted? A son who understands business? But we can't possibly pay all this back. My sister finally spoke up, her voice trembling. Sure you can, I said calmly. I did the math. If you both get entry-level jobs and live modestly, you should be able to pay it off in about 15 years. That's assuming you work hard, of course. You know how to work hard, right? That's what you always told me I needed to learn. They left my office with slumped shoulders, signed payment agreements in hand. As they walked out, I called after them. By the way, my worthless computer hobby says hello. Through my office window, I watched them leave the building. They looked like different people than the ones who had walked in, broken, humbled, finally facing the consequences of their actions. My assistant brought me an espresso afterward. Tough meeting? She asked. No, I replied, smiling. Just some overdue accounting. Later that evening, I discovered that Dad had tried to contact some of my investors, hoping to plead his case. Unfortunately for him, he tried reaching out to the same companies that had rejected his golden child's business plan months ago. They just forwarded his desperate emails to me. I called my grandmother that evening to tell her what happened. She laughed for a full minute. Your aunt would be so proud, she said. Not of the revenge, of the success you've built despite them. She's right. The best revenge wasn't buying their debt or enforcing the payments. It was succeeding on my own terms, proving that I never needed their approval or support. Their golden child fantasy has crumbled, while my worthless hobby built an empire. Sometimes justice takes time, but when it comes, it's sweet indeed. Thanks Reddit for all your support throughout this journey. Your comments and encouragement helped me stay focused on success rather than bitterness. And yes, watching them sign those payment agreements was every bit as satisfying as you all predicted it would be.